At 2:47 a.m., above the freezing Baltic Sea near Sweden's Gotland Island, a Russian Kilo-class submarine, often called the Black Hole of the ocean because of how quietly it moves, was slipping through the water toward a major deep-sea data cable. This hidden lifeline carries vast financial traffic and sensitive NATO intelligence. What was unfolding was a serious and calculated move, aimed at disrupting a key link in the West's communications network. Inside the submarine, the Russian technical crew remained in complete silence as they closed in to within 300 meters of the target. They were preparing to use a specialized device to cut one of the world's most important fiber optic lines. At that depth and in the Baltic's difficult acoustic environment, they believed they could not be detected by any NATO ship or aircraft nearby. But they had overlooked one critical factor: the advanced detection capabilities of the U.S. Navy. Within minutes, what the crew believed was an invisible presence in the water was transformed into a confirmed target. The Russian submarine unit had already received its instructions from Moscow: carry out the mission and do not pull back. Yet the Kremlin was about to be reminded why testing the U.S. Navy in international waters, especially in a region that has become far more important to NATO, can be a dangerous gamble. At the same time, American anti-submarine forces had their own clear direction: apply constant pressure and leave no room for movement. This was far more than a routine military drill. It was a tense geopolitical contest where a single mistake could trigger a direct clash unlike anything seen since the Cold War. The pressure on both sides was enormous. With Finland and Sweden now officially part of NATO, the Baltic Sea has effectively become a zone dominated by the alliance. But that shift has not happened quietly. Facing growing pressure, Russia has leaned more heavily into hybrid tactics, targeting critical infrastructure without launching a traditional missile strike. The objective is not necessarily to destroy warships, but to weaken the invisible economic and military connections that hold the West together. If that cable were severed, financial systems could slow down, and NATO's command and control coordination could become delayed and exposed at the worst possible moment. It would be like cutting a body's central nerve pathway and leaving confusion in its place. And in that confusion, Russia would hope to gain an opening. As this hidden danger became clear, the NATO exercise codenamed Taos Strike was quickly redirected. Its new priority was no longer general training, but the urgent hunt for deep-sea sabotage teams operating below the surface. What followed became a highly visible demonstration of NATO's reach and readiness, a clear signal that any hostile move, even one designed to stay in the shadows, would draw a powerful response. This is the kind of conflict where the threat is meant to stay unseen. But to the U.S. Navy, it is not some mystery. It is a technical challenge they have been studying and solving for decades. And anyone who believes silence alone is enough to disappear from the world's most advanced anti-submarine forces is making a serious mistake. Russia's main goal in this region is to regain influence and weaken NATO's unity. The Baltic Fleet's strategy is not to confront a U.S. carrier strike group directly. That would be reckless. Instead, the aim is to spread uncertainty, create political friction, and cause economic disruption through attacks that can be denied, especially against critical civilian and military infrastructure beneath the sea. The Kilo-class submarine, especially its upgraded version, was chosen for exactly this kind of mission because of its strong acoustic and electromagnetic stealth. With advanced sound-dampening materials and quiet electric propulsion, it can descend to depths of around 240 meters and move at only 3 knots, producing a sound signature so faint it nearly disappears into the natural noise of the sea. In Russian planning, this makes the Kilo more than a submarine. It becomes a precise underwater tool, built to operate without being noticed. That confidence comes from a calculated assumption that NATO is too focused on missile threats and major surface fleets to fully concentrate on the difficult, silent underwater environment of the Baltic. From that perspective, the Kilo is seen as an asymmetric advantage, an older but modernized platform carrying out a mission designed for a new era. The danger is not only in its torpedoes, including 53 to 65K systems capable of acquiring targets after launch, but in the broader mission itself, underwater sabotage that can cause massive disruption without an open battlefield. A single successful strike on subsea infrastructure could create enormous financial losses and confusion before anyone fully understands what has happened. Moscow's hope is simple. The cable is severed, the event is dismissed as a technical failure or natural disturbance, and the West is left scrambling for answers while the damage is already done. That confidence has been reinforced by the fact that, over the previous 48 hours, the Kilo had managed to avoid detection by passive sonar systems operated by German and Swedish forces. But there was one thing the Russian crew did not realize. The search was no longer only in European hands. American assets had now entered the engagement chain. And when the U.S. Navy joins an anti-submarine hunt, the entire dynamic changes. What followed was a textbook example of a fully integrated anti-submarine operation, beginning in the sky and extending deep below the surface. At 20,000 feet, a U.S. Navy P-8A Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft was flying a dense search grid above the Baltic Sea. The P-8A is far more than a surveillance aircraft. It serves as the command center of the entire anti-submarine mission, a multi-sensor intelligence platform built to detect, track, and coordinate against underwater threats. Equipped with the AN/APY-10 radar and advanced surveillance systems, it can scan vast ocean areas, identify unusual surface activity, and support submarine detection even in difficult coastal waters. But in this complex acoustic environment, the Poseidon's greatest advantage was its ability to deploy large numbers of sonobuoys. These floating sensors were released in carefully calculated patterns, creating a wide underwater listening network across dozens of square nautical miles. Some buoys listened passively for engine sounds, propeller noise, or hull vibrations. Others actively sent sound pulses into the water and listened for echoes returning from submerged contacts. Another major advantage came from the aircraft's magnetic anomaly detection system, designed to sense tiny disturbances in Earth's magnetic field caused by the metal mass of a submarine moving below. Even a quiet vessel can struggle to hide from physics. Every signal gathered by the aircraft, from sonobuoys, magnetic sensors, radar feeds, and nearby NATO vessels, was immediately transmitted across Link 16 and Link 22 tactical networks. In seconds, data from multiple platforms became one shared operational picture. At the center of that network was the USS Winston S. Churchill, DDG-81, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer equipped with the Aegis Baseline 9 combat system. Its radar and combat systems were processing huge streams of information in real time, helping transform scattered sensor inputs into precise targeting solutions. This is where American naval strength becomes most visible: synchronization. The P-8A provided the ears and long-range search capability. The destroyer acted as the decision hub. Swedish and German warships nearby were positioned to respond immediately if needed. This is the core of modern sensor-to-shooter warfare, finding a target through shared data, identifying it instantly, and creating response options before the opponent realizes they have been located. On board the Churchill, tactical officers did not need to wait for slow verbal reports. The suspected Kilo-class submarine was already visible through multiple layers of confirmed data. Acoustic signals, movement patterns, and magnetic traces had combined into one clear track. The combat system had already generated an immediate firing solution and prepared options, including the RU-M139 vertical launch anti-submarine rocket system from the ship's Mark 41 launch cells. The Russian submarine believed it was hidden. It no longer was. For the Kilo, the silence was over. Without warning, the stillness around the submarine was shattered by the harsh pulse of active sonar. The sound rolled through the water and into the hull itself, turning the entire boat into a vibrating metal shell. On his console, Captain Romanov suddenly saw 3 new contacts appear, active sonobuoys sending out powerful search pings. In that instant, he understood the situation. They had been found. Then came something even more chilling. A single ultrasonic data burst arrived through the sonobuoy network, relayed from the Churchill. It contained just one coordinate, his exact position. Along with it came a short, cold message. Target locked. Disengage immediately. Failure to comply will result in escalation. Romanov checked the numbers against his own inertial navigation data. The margin of error was almost non-existent, less than 5 meters. There was no confusion, no room for doubt. At 3:05:30 a.m., staring at the chart in front of him, he realized the truth. The Kilo was no longer a ghost in the water, it was trapped inside an acoustic cage. He also understood the warning behind the warning. The launch he had just witnessed proved everything. Aegis had shown it could place a weapon solution directly on his position. If that had been a real anti-submarine strike, the encounter would already be over. Romanov made his choice. All stations, abort mission, retreat at flank speed. And with that, the operation collapsed. What was meant to be a covert act of pressure ended in a very visible failure. In just 2 minutes and 15 seconds, the balance had completely reversed. The Russian submarine shifted from a nearly silent 3-knot crawl to a full 17-knot withdrawal, an emergency retreat that turned it from a shadow into something impossible to ignore. Underwater, that kind of speed does not whisper. It roars. Any chance of plausible deniability disappeared with it. Romanov had chosen the lives of his crew over the mission, a logical decision under the circumstances. But strategically, it was a defeat. The US Navy and NATO had done more than stop a suspected sabotage attempt. They had also collected something extremely valuable, a full acoustic profile of the Kilo at high speed in the exact temperature and salinity conditions of the Baltic Sea. That data was now captured by the P-8A, the Churchill and Swedish and German naval units. For NATO's sonar operators, this was a major advantage. In future operations, even in difficult and noisy waters, that signature could help identify and classify the same submarine far faster than before. Moscow said nothing. No formal statement followed, no convincing explanation appeared, and that silence only made the outcome more damaging. The image of a stealth-focused Kilo-class submarine approaching undersea infrastructure only to break contact and flee once detected was a serious embarrassment. The cost was not measured only in prestige. One of Russia's most carefully protected undersea assets had just lost much of its mystery. The submarine, once described as a black hole, now had an acoustic fingerprint stored in NATO databases with remarkable clarity. For the U.S. Navy, this was a disciplined and decisive success. There was no need to destroy the submarine to make the point. It was enough to prove that they could locate it, track it, and hold it at risk with speed and precision. And that was the real message. This was never only about defending a cable. It was about demonstrating control, exposing vulnerability, and making it unmistakably clear that even the quietest move beneath the sea can still be seen. It became a clear demonstration of the West's technological edge. Commander Hayes and her crew returned to routine patrol operations, and life aboard the ship settled back into its usual disciplined rhythm. But everyone on board understood one thing: the Baltic Sea would not feel the same after that night. A signal had been delivered, and it was impossible to miss. The most important lesson from this brief but intense encounter was not the speed of any weapon. It was the extraordinary coordination behind the American combat system. That is the real warning for any potential rival. The age of quiet, deniable hybrid pressure begins to fall apart the moment it meets the full reach of U.S. multi-domain operations. Whether a threat hides beneath the sea, moves through the digital sphere, or operates under the cover of darkness, the American Detection and Response Network is built to locate it, track it, and demonstrate precise targeting before the other side fully understands it has been exposed. The Kilo-class submarine revealed a harsh reality. Every stealth advantage has limits when it is faced with the combination of high-speed Link 16 data sharing and the centralized processing power of Aegis. This is not about a single destroyer or one patrol aircraft. It is about the entire NATO warfighting network functioning as one connected system, making isolated efforts by any adversary far less effective. The outcome also reinforced the U.S. Navy's central role in maintaining wider security. It was a reminder that stability is not preserved through passivity, but through disciplined professionalism and the ability to respond with overwhelming clarity when necessary. Now that the Baltic has become a far more NATO-centered region, the message to Moscow is unmistakable. Covert pressure will not stay hidden for long. Attempts at invisible aggression risk ending in very public embarrassment, and silence will be answered by the most powerful message America can send. Not noise, not speeches, but the quiet certainty of systems that have already established control. How this changes Russia's future approach in the Baltic remains to be seen. But after this encounter, one thing is much harder to deny. The balance of awareness beneath the surface has shifted.